Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With us today, we have the pleasure of Katrina Holland, Executive Director of MedTech Color. Welcome to the show, Katrina.
Thanks, Lucas. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I mentioned Executive Director. You're actually the first Executive Director of MedTech Color, which we can get into in a bit. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your path to this current role, and then a little bit more about your current role.
I am an association executive. I've been in this business for about 25 years. I started, believe it or not, on a path to become a lawyer, and was working in a large law firm as a paralegal in Chicago. And after about, I don't know, 3 years of that and seeing the lifestyle, decided, no, I don't want to be a lawyer full time, and certainly not in a large law firm. And had a friend who worked as a web designer of an association. And, this was a time when you could go have lunch with the executive director, and which is what I did. And, he says, you're a fit here. I don't know where, but we're going to find a fit for you. And he found a fit, and I was hired as a manager of membership. And the rest is history. That was my first entree into associations, an association of defense trial lawyers in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound too dissimilar. A lot of people either stumble in or they get pulled in. It sounds rightly so. You were recruited in. And yeah, I hear a lot of executive directors that have, political science majors, aspirations of being in politics, or you're into law school because they want to be an attorney, and at some point eject to find this wonderful, crazy world of association. So then once you got in, what's kept you here?
Well, I think just kind of the diversity of all the different tasks that you get to do in associations. Nothing is linear. Being on the side of supporting a profession, it feels, in my view, very American, very capitalistic. We get to advocate on behalf of certain professions. We get to, make our mark on the world in that way. And also, there's the social side of connecting with people, which I found to be, really rewarding. And it kind of takes away this sense of, you have all these professions. Every association has a profession, doctors and lawyers and architects and all of them. Like, there is this huge monolith, which, defines this country, and it's not. There are people behind all those professions. And so an association has this kind of wonderful way of, being a part of that whole picture. And so it's kept me interested for so many years.
Yeah, it is a common thread that the mission aspect of working within associations. You may be one of the first guests that has ever complimentary embraced, if you will, the multiple hats piece, right? So that's usually people. There's almost an angst of, but I wear 15 different hats in my role. But at the level where you are executive director, you kind of have to embrace it because it does come with it. There isn't one role or one description of a job that you do within that role.
Sure. And listen, it's not for everybody. It is not for everybody. My father was career military, and then he worked in the federal government. And, I had thought about moving in the direction of a government position, but then I could not, because the thought of doing a specific task in a specific way, that was so heavily regulated, I couldn't. I'd be bored. And so, I tell you one thing, the associations are many things. Boring isn't one of them. And if you feel as though, what you're doing isn't making the right kind of impact, you can always, go to a different mission or different profession.
Yeah, there is always something when you're working with a mission-based organization that you can be accomplishing, right? It's one program, achieve, expand, build. That is the nice thing about missions. There's no winning, right? There's progress and there's advancement of a mission. But the idea that there's not a goal, but we're making progress is the day to day. And so that aspect, you're right. It's not doing the same things. There's a lot of change. You have to embrace that and be open to it.
Totally agree. Um, and if you think about certain missions, you get to have kind of the benefit of really being part of a movement. And as my career has progressed, I have found that this is really more and more the way I want to spend my time, helping to solve some of the bigger solutions, and really being a part of some answers to real, pressing questions. So,
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about, what you think looking back led you to this specific role, and, how has that prepared you for where you sit today?
yeah. So as I said, I started working with defense trial lawyers, and that was my first entree into association work. And that was a lot of fun, and I came to understand kind of the benefit, the upside and the downside to associations. Um, and I transitioned from there to work with um, doctors, and this was during a time when it was healthcare reform. And so that group of physicians was very much so focused on what was on the future of healthcare reform and how it was going to impact physicians. And what did we need to do as association professionals to prepare them for that, whether it was on the quality side, whether that was on the education side. And so we got to come up with, really transformative education and professional development. And we got to predict what would happen in the future before, most of the profession even understood it. And working in that group specifically, I really came to appreciate what, really being in a forward-thinking association could feel like. You're not just sitting there running meetings. You're not, just going through the day to day. You're really helping to support and advance an entire profession. And so, kind of fast forward from there, I tended to want to be a part of associations that had that kind of change mindset, you know, who were never content to just kind of, keep things moving, but were always kind of future focused on what's to come. So after, I guess about 10 or 15 years of me being in membership and marketing, I was ready for my next step. And I had the opportunity and was tapped to be the CEO of the American College of Nurse Midwives. And that just preceded my appointment here with MedTech Color. And in that organization, and we all now, know a lot about maternal mortality and, this country's role in, making it not the best, place for people to birth babies. But specifically, DEI became a focus because of the lack of diversity in midwifery workforce and the need to really grow it because there's a provider, a healthcare provider, specifically on the maternity care side. And so, um, really being a part of that movement and being able to be involved in advocacy efforts there changed my whole mindset of kind of leveling up what I already knew I wanted, forward thinking, but then forward thinking in a way that's going to be progressive that can help people and specifically this country. Um, so the opportunity with MedTech Color came up, and I had, you know, didn't know of an association that focused on medtech. And I came to find out that there is no individual professional association for medtech. There's a trade association where all the large medtech companies are members of. But that's very different than an individual membership association. And so here I am tapped as the next executive director to help really build a vision along with the board of what this professional association could be and should be. And so, thinking about always wanting to be, on ahead of things, forward thinking, on the right side of history when someone looks back on, what did different professions do? How did they respond to challenges? To me, this was it. And it was kind of presented to me. And the minute I met the board, I kind of knew. It was like, oh man, these folks are not only courageous for seeing an issue and saying we're going to start an organization, and then getting it to the point to where they knew they needed to have someone do this full time. I stepped in, and here we are. So it's one of these things where you look back on your life and listen, there were challenges in different positions I was in. And sometimes I felt like I wasn't seen, or that I wasn't being challenged in the right way. But what I learned in some of those positions was that um, there's going to be good and there's going to be bad, and your challenge is to focus on all the good things and extract the bad and use those good things and those experiences to take you to that next level, and not let them pull you back. So that's kind of where I landed, and I still have to call on all those lessons. It isn't easy being in a young associate. It isn't easy being in an environment that is always throwing you curveballs. Um, but I don't think I'd have it any other way.
Yeah. That's a really good story, Katrina. I love hearing that. You're clearly passionate about it. I've done a couple of startups differentiating from young organizations like MedTech Color, and they're hard. And one of the questions I had written down was simply, what keeps you going, right? Because we could talk about the challenges of building, I'll say, and continuing to grow a young association, a young organization. And I do want to ask, one of the questions on the backside of that was, but what keeps you going through all that? What's the fulfilling part about this? I felt like a lot of that you just shared. I mean, it was really obvious your passion behind that mission and kind of what's led you here. I see you light up, when you talk about it. I think it was pretty obvious. You're baked into this mission and you're getting behind it in full force. I mean, what are sort of your goals and dreams as you continue to look forward for MedTech Color in the next few years?
Yeah. I'd say what keeps me going, and you have to have something to keep you going. First, you have to have faith. If you don't have it, find it. You need it. Um, and you really have to believe that what you're doing is the truth, because you will always hear from someone who will argue the opposite. you know, Certainly in a position that's focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we sit here today. There's arguments about, well, forget the three letters DEI. What about merit? Assuming that merit, in and of itself, is like the opposite of someone who comes from a diverse background. So I think just knowing that what you're doing is right, and that is what has to fuel you when times are tough. And so if I think about that, I also think about also making sure that you have time for yourself to recharge. Because even if you're passionate about something, certainly probably more so when you're passionate about something, you tend to put all of your energy in that direction. And then it's not until, you sit in one place for a period of time, and next thing you know, you're opening your eyes because you fell asleep, that your body realizes that you're tired. And so it's really carving out some time to, number one, rest, but also take care of yourself so that you're able to pour into other things. And that's what we do. And I guess the third thing is really surrounding yourself with a support group and a network, and people who align with your values and who align with what you're trying to accomplish. And that is, for me, one of the things that I have learned. The older I've gotten, that you don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to argue everybody down. People are going to have different perspectives, and that's okay. And sometimes you have to find the folks who understand it, who get it, so that you all can be each other's cheerleaders and each other's support system. It's kind of like what your therapist says. You need a support group. That's true in real life, you know? And I think when you think about young organizations and who, are moving up that startup um, curve, that is extremely important. Founders need founders. They're the only ones that understand that it is a 360-degree effort that takes all of your ability at one particular time sometimes to move things forward. So That's why it's so gratifying when you're able to get on the other side of a challenge and you can celebrate your wins, which is another little nugget of wisdom. When you win, celebrate, you know, yeah. So I mean, I could talk forever about all sorts of things, but it has been a year of really calling on all the things that I've ever learned in every association, um, to kind of bring that to bear in this moment to move everybody forward.
Yeah. Two things while you were thinking. One, I gonna make a plug or pull on the thread of being passionate. There's just such a need to really to take time, if you get to an executive level, taking time and really asking yourself, am I really, really passionate about the mission of this organization, whatever it may be? Am I really behind this? Or am I just telling myself that I am because I'm too damn stubborn or too damn scared to make a move to go elsewhere? And the fulfillment of finding something of doing that you really enjoy, that you really are passionate about, not only will you be more fulfilled personally and get to a later part in your life and understand that I did for the greater good, I did something good, I did something that I wanted to do, and that's a win of life if there is such a thing. But you also do better work. You'll produce more with the same or less time than you ever thought you could, because as you said, it won't feel like work.
No, it gets
Yeah.
easier. It gets
Yeah.
easier. Imagine that. You
Yeah.
can produce, you can actually create because you're inspired,
Right.
and fear is a crazy thing. I tell you, it is a crazy thing. And what I finally learned is that whenever I'm in a situation where I'm faced with fear, and it still happens, nerves happen, speaking in front
Absolutely.
of people. I was telling my daughter yesterday, she's performing at a concert and she's doing the sign of the cross, she's
Yep.
doing all these things. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I think it's my mindset. She's 14. She's like, I think it's my mindset. I'm telling myself, don't mess up. But I think I need to tell myself, you're going to do great. It's like, yeah, you do. Because if you keep saying you're going to mess up, probably going to mess up. you know,
Well, you're going to be thinking about
you're
that's
going to be thinking
that's
about
a
it. You're going
mature
to
14-year-old right there. Yeah.
exactly. So, but it's certainly mindset, and it is moving in the direction of fear is what I've learned. Something makes you scared, that's where you go. You head straight in that direction and you conquer it. And then guess what? You're not afraid anymore.
That's right.
Um, yeah.
You learn from it. Yeah, I have a couple of teenagers. Well, 12. She just turned 12 yesterday, and 15. And at this point, I should probably start transitioning with the 15-year-old into, you just need to plow through it. It is fear. You are nervous. Today, I'll just to be fully transparent, I've told them, I think what you're confusing fear with is excitement. And so I've been trying to sort of play that Jedi trick of like, no, you're just excited. You just don't understand what that feeling is,
Uh-huh.
but be excited about it.
That's right. That
Maybe
too.
maybe a little bit of both. It's a balancing act.
Yeah. I mean, well, it lets them know they care about it. The nerves are there because you want to do well, or
Yeah.
the nerves are there is because, for me, I can only speak for myself. Um, I Sometimes there are situations where I know what I think, but I'm wondering if I say what I think, what's going to be the reaction? What are they
Mhm.
going to think about me? Am I going to be wrong or am I going to be right? None of that matters. What do you think? How do you feel? Express that.
Yeah.
And that helps you tend to become, a little bit more courageous, a little bit more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. Maybe you can't have excitement without fear. They sort of go hand in hand, much like people would say you really can't have grief unless you have love, right? That's the expression of the love, is the grief
Mhm.
when things change, and maybe it's something similar. The other piece that I wanted to pull on was just the team aspect, right? It's a young organization, and as you continue to grow and develop, I know you will, it's really, really important that you pull in the right team members around you, both mission, and as you continue to just sort of specialize, and maybe eventually you take more and more hats off and hand them off to the right team member. I mean, talk to us a little bit about what you're thinking, and are there resources out there that you're looking for right now that you can share, full-time or fractional or what have you, ways that folks can support MedTech Color?
Absolutely. You really hit the nail on the head with the team aspects in a young organization. And this was probably one of the biggest um, issues that I had to kind of level set on, coming from a much larger organization, much older and established one, is what about your team? And do you have the right people in the right seats to be able
Mm-hmm.
to advance the mission, where you want to go, short and long term? I'm never at a loss for vision and ideas. I got all those.
Who's going to execute?
Right. Who's going to do all that stuff? That is the lesson that I have learned how to temper it back. And listen, I'm still learning, because I came in and I'm like, I know exactly what we're going to do. You know, we're going to redo our website, we're going to redo our database, we're going to launch this job board, and we're going to do it all this year,
Oh,
because we have to, right? We
right.
need systems so I can start to earn revenue,
That's right.
which in a young organization, you better earn it. Like, you need to
Right.
earn it. And so I set off very quickly in that direction. And after about 6 months in, I'm like, man, this is really hard. Right. So what I ended up doing is, towards the end of the year now, we have engaged fractional support from an association management company, which I didn't think we needed to do in the beginning. But I learned very quickly that, yes, we certainly did. Um, so while I think we're ramping up on the staffing side, the next step is we need more volunteers. We've got to have a bigger volunteer workforce,
Yeah.
because one of the things, I mean, that associations, there's a balance. You have volunteer workforce, staff workforce, and so that's really where I, along with the board, are really trying to ramp up to get more people so that we can tap into their networks, because we need that expertise to be able to create the content now, right?
Mhm.
So we've got our systems in place. Congratulations, we have a new website, we have a new database. We had all the stuff that I said in my head we needed.
Yeah,
Now we have to produce.
that's right.
I would say that, definitely volunteer workforce and following. And then the other thing is, when I think about fundraising, a big part of what we've done in the past is on the corporate side, getting a lot of corporate support. And that
Mhm.
was a challenge. It was very volatile this year, with respect to that. And so now I'm looking more for, on the foundation side, private foundations or state or federal groups that have objectives that align with our mission, which is to advance the representation of people of color in medtech and
Mhm.
to grow that workforce, so that we have more diverse perspectives who are designing all these devices and digital health apps. If I think about our longevity and some of the resources that would help us really create a strong foundation, that's a shift. And anyone who has started a business or been in a young business knows that the funding is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah, even a nonprofit, right? It's still cash flow to us to a degree. You need cash to grow. You have to invest to grow. It takes money to make money, right? That old adage, it's 100% true. And it's especially in young organizations that are trying to get to those next levels and reach new heights and new audiences. It takes funding. Oh,
That's right.
it is it as simple if somebody's listening in the audience, and can they go to this new website that's been launched and reach out, or what's the best way to get in contact with MedTech?
Yeah, I would say, yes, you can go to the website, our brand new website, and there's a link that says contact us. So if anyone has any ideas or any connections they think would benefit us, for sure, reach out.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll put some links into the episode as well if you're listening, down below type of thing. What other aspects? I'm always curious, right? You're growing the young organization, young association. What are some of the other bigger challenges, right? There's, as you said, there's always going to be stuff, growing pains, if you want to call it that. For those that are thinking about doing this in the association market or thinking about taking roles in younger associations, what should we give them a heads up on that's coming so that they don't get blindsided about?
Yeah, oh, well, this is a great one. I think when you're going into a younger organization, you really have to take a very uh, clear look at the mission and the goals. And you have to make sure that your board has reached a consensus around what those goals are. And you have to make sure that those are clearly articulated, not only on the website, but certainly on the website. But whenever we're having conversations around, strategy and moving the organization forward, that is because when you are young and people, know the founders or know people who are engaged in the organization, then it's very easy to mission creep. Like it's very easy for the scope to go from here to there because they have decided in their head that this is, oh no, this organization can help us with this. Like, no, that's not what we do. Um, and all of a sudden you find that the tail is wagging the dog and you don't know how it happened, but it's happening. So you just have to be very clear about what your mission is and your strategic plan. And that's, really having that conversation and then revisiting it obviously every year because people get really excited if they feel as though your mission is worthwhile. And we have many supporters who believe that it is. But on the other side of that, you have these larger organizations, some of the biggest. Think of the biggest medtech companies out there. They have their own goals, you see. They have their own strategies, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so they very clearly know what they want. And so even if your mission doesn't necessarily align with theirs, all it takes is one conversation for them to say, but we really need you to do this. You're like, oh, okay, well, we'll figure out a way to do it.
Right.
We can't do that. And that has been so. And when you're in a younger organization, that's a big challenge because you want, the big players to support you. You want them to be, a part of the mission, but you can't let them take over either. So that is a big deal. And then there's a whole values conversation that has to happen too. That's a really big deal because, again, older association, you've got these list of values. We believe in, I don't know, equity. We believe in all these things. And you just kind of look at it, but you don't really,
Feel it?
you don't feel it. But sometimes you have to, in a younger one, values matter because you're going to be, again, faced with these conversations, these decisions from large groups. And, think about, man, if we could strike a deal with company X, this is a game changer for us.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really like these values. So are these still our values or are we willing to negotiate the values? That's where the integrity comes in, where the vision comes in. And so I think the value conversation and the value really living and breathing it is at a different level when you are young. And I really have come to appreciate all of these rooms that I've been in for 20 years around strategic planning, the wordsmithing around the mission and the vision. And, I can say 20 years ago, I was kind of like, why am I doing, like, why are we? Is it really this important? Now I get it.
Yeah,
It is. It's really
absolutely. Yeah, I say I wear the scar for making the mistake of going, too wide and flat, saying yes too many times. And now we often talk internally of this metaphor of, progress is like a river. And if you let the river just sort of creep the banks, what happens to the same volume of water? Well, it slows down. But if you force the banks in on the focus, what happens with the same amount of water? It goes really, really fast and it rushes faster than you think you can go. And everybody on the boat moves at lightning speed. And so continuing to just sort of push the banks in and say no. And in my experience, it's exciting where you get these opportunities where, like, as you said, hey, what we really want you to do is this. It seems exciting on the surface, but what I found way more fulfilling, and just builds real values and confidence internally with the team is saying no, and simply saying like, no, that's not us. And one, it feels good just to be able to say like, we've gotten to a point where we can not say yes to everything. We don't have to say yes to everything. But actually, for the purposes of the team and the mission, it's the most important thing you can say is no.
Absolutely. That is so key. It is so key. And know that even though you're saying no, it doesn't mean that the opportunity is gone. It just means that you've now said yes and given the possibility of other organizations who do align with you, who do have the same values, to know, you know, that you're the one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's and you find a better fit, right? You sort of, you say no to that so that you save yourself to say yes for that thing that does check all the boxes. Because right at the beginning, it feels like the revenue box is big, and it sometimes feels like it almost dampens and trumps the other boxes, including the culture and the mission and everything else. But it's actually the reverse. For the longer term, you have to sync the revenue as a slightly, still a box. Don't get us wrong, right? We still got to make, we still have to produce revenue and to be able to invest and grow, like we said. But you have to weight early on those mission and value check boxes as more important than they look on the surface.
Absolutely. It is. And and then I would say something that aligns with that is we're also at a point where we're going to be growing our board. Probably doubling the size of our board, which is huge. Well, right now our board is 3 people.
Well,
So
doubling's doubling.
doubling is doubling. And I know that that is going to change the conversations in the boardroom. And I mean, not only is it going to expand our network of people and influence, but it's going to change those conversations. And so that's another thing in a younger organization. I come from a place where we had a board of 15 to a place where there's a board of 3, where we're going to double that. And that's going to be a culture shift, big time. And so the same conversations that I would have with a 15-person board around the role of the executive director and the role of the board, I have to have those. They matter even more. And so it's almost like, if there's anyone out there thinking about wanting to move in the direction of a younger organization, I would say make sure you have the right amount of experience, and that means years, to be able to step into a position where you better know your stuff, but because you have to know when and how to kind of ebb and flow, right? When you need, okay, let them go and do this, or when you need to be, no, this is my recommendation, and here's why. Because it's very easy to step into any CEO or executive director position. The path of least resistance sometimes is to say yes, because you just want your board to be happy.
Right.
And if they're happy, I'm happy. But nope, that's not typically the best way, because not only you just have to make sure that you are, making the right decision for the right reasons, and also remember that you have a whole team behind you who, has the benefit of the impact of your decisions. So
Absolutely. It's I mean, that's healthy, right? To grow the board. But as you said, it brings, on a positive side, more perspectives, more opinions. And on the negative side, it brings more perspectives and more opinions. And that
That's
has to
right.
be, managed, right? There's power in that, but it'll lead to more difficult conversations. And yeah, and more, but again, the positive of the diversity of that will ultimately, if managed well, lead to the better decisions for the organization.
For sure. For sure.
Well, I'm going to switch gears to a couple of fun ones. And I always sort of like ending on these more whimsical questions that may be more Katrina focused, less MedTech Color, but we'll see. The first is, we're coming up on the end of the year. If I've just now dated the episode, that's okay. But what's that thing looking forward to the next year that always sort of gets on your calendar first, and maybe you already have it booked, and if the board wanted to meet, even you're not moving it. Like, what is that thing for you?
I would say once a year, my family and I we go out of the country. My husband's from Jamaica, so we are on the island in the summertime, no matter what.
Awesome.
Gotta go. All right. And funnily enough, the Wi-Fi is spotty on the island.
Oh, darn.
So so I'm off radar. Um, it's been a challenge to do that sometimes, but I can't tell you how much benefit that is when you can just reset and also be in a culture where no one's rushing, no one cares. So
Yeah.
whatever stress you thought you had, better let it go because it's going to take a long time to get whatever it is you want anyway.
Yeah.
So
It's island time. Come
it's
on.
island
It's the
time.
best time.
So I'm blessed to have that culture in my family, and and my husband specifically, he it helps me reset and not be so hardwired and so focused all the time.
Is he a cook? I ask because I love Jamaican food. I like spicy stuff. I like Jamaican food. Does he cook?
Funnily enough, he's in the restaurant business. So yeah, it was not a planted question. This is no, he does, and so yes, it's very spicy, and he does cook, which is why I also have to stay in the gym,
Okay.
and because it's quite delicious.
We can plug the restaurant too. Look down below. Maybe we'll include the link. What about something else about Katrina that we couldn't find online? It feels like you can find everybody's whole life almost, but something we couldn't find online or on your resume about Katrina.
Oh, well, I used to put it on my resume, but I stopped because I felt like I had outgrown it. But at one point in my life, there was a fork in the road, and I could have been a star in Hollywood or an association professional, but I did improv in college and even up through my 20s. Improv Olympic, Second City, I was there. And so I kind of now, when I do, presentations and speaking and things like that, that kind of thing doesn't, I enjoy that. And I know it's because at one point I wanted to be a star.
Yeah.
And um, and it's interesting, and people, say this all the time, the world is so small because there's a lot of folks that when I was performing and doing that who are off in the world writing, for shows and performing, and I see them and I'm like, I remember.
Mm-hmm. Do you get the itch sometimes?
Never.
Never. Okay.
With all the drama happening, I'm like, I am so glad I am so far.
No time to think about it necessarily.
Exactly.
Well, you're a different kind of star now, but what I've learned from our conversation today is you feel like you're exactly in the right seat, not to put words in your mouth, and you are driving this mission towards a place that makes for a better world.
I am.
Well, Katrina, the conversation has been wonderful. I would love to hear if there's somebody in your network you think our audience would also benefit from hearing from.
Yeah. So I had the benefit of working with a really talented editor-in-chief, communications person. Her name is Janelle Julian. And, I think that she has helped me through many a publication crisis, and it's just really an asset to the association world. So I think that the world would benefit from learning more about her and how she got to where she is.
Okay, Janelle, we're coming. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And Katrina, really, really appreciate the time today and sharing everything that you've learned and more about yourself. It was a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Lucas.